I will be honest with you, I've been doing this for 2.5 decades and I have never seen anything this gruesome. I've never seen anything this bad.
This story comes with a big warning. The details are incredibly gruesome. Police in Easley, South Carolina say a mother intentionally killed her son while she was giving birth to him, and she allegedly used a shocking weapon to do it. We are looking at these horrifying details, whether the woman has any defense at all, and the consequences she could face for her alleged actions. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, let's talk about it. Talk about 31-year-old Ann No being held without bond right now, pending her next court date, after police say she brutally murdered her newborn son. This happened 1 week ago in Easley, South Carolina. It's west of Greenville in an apartment complex. Police there say No gave birth inside of her apartment and then started stabbing the baby. Does it get any worse than that? Does it get more twisted than that? According to Fox Carolina, it was her boyfriend who called 911 in a panic, although it's unclear right now if he was actually at the apartment when this allegedly happened. But Easley's police chief spoke about what first responders found when they got to the scene.
On March the 7th, which would have been Friday night at roughly 8:20, officers responded to Nations Way here in Easley. The reason they responded was because it was an EMS call for service. They get on scene and realize very quickly this is something much more. Once on scene, they attempted to assist EMS with saving the life of this infant, at which time they realized very quickly was to no avail, and the infant was declared dead on scene. It was at that time that they called for investigators. SLED was also called to assist with their infant death unit. So once they arrived on scene with the search warrant, they actually investigated and began to go into the apartment. It was very evident at the time that Miss No, NGO is how you spell her name, but Miss No did have the baby in the apartment. It was very apparent that Miss No is the one who tragically murdered this child, and it is at that time we went ahead and applied for a warrant for homicide by a child abuse.
It's horrible. It is so horrible. I want to bring in criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney, Tyler Bailey. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on. These cases, man, these are the ones that I hate. I really, it's tough to cover these, and you just think about not only what that child went through, but you also think about what first responders and police had to see. That's not an easy scene. Before we get into the specifics of the arrest warrant and the legality here, what is your reaction to this story? Because it seems almost unbelievable, but unfortunately, do you see these types of cases where parents kill newborn babies like this, or allegedly kill newborn babies like this?
Yeah, this type of case is just sinister and gruesome. And just imagining what the scene of this crime looked like, I just can't even imagine as a parent, as a lawyer as well, and just the sheer depravity of one's whole being it would take to do something like that to a newborn baby. You know, usually there's that maternal love between a mom and a new child, and for a baby to be coming out of the womb and then immediately murdered like this is just terrible. But you know, we've covered these cases from time to time here in South Carolina, and it's just terrible to think about.
This is a tough case. There's really no other way to say it, but it does raise a lot of important issues that we wanted to bring to you. And so with that, I want to quickly thank our sponsor, Odoo, because their support helps us to produce episodes like this. Now, if you don't know what it is, Odoo is an incredible all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications. And one of my favorite Odoo applications is their website builder with their drag and drop feature and AI copywriter helping me come up with website descriptions. I could build a website for my other show, Prime Crime, in literally minutes. I mean, look how cool this is. Look at that. Look how beautiful it is. So thank you to Odoo for sponsoring Sidebar, giving us the tools to build new sites, and you can build your website now too. The domain is free for the first year when you use our link odoo.com/sidebarweb. You chose to move forward with having a baby, went through the entire pregnancy, give birth, and then do this. I mean, that again, yeah, look, we've covered cases before where you have young mothers who give birth, they panic, they don't know what to do, and they end up killing the baby, or they don't know how to treat the baby after, they give a birth privately. Those are separate kind of situations, okay? And we could debate whether or not it was a crime, whether or not it was murder. But the allegations here, clear cut about what we're talking about. Although I will tell you the charges she's facing are interesting, but the idea to go through all that and then kill the baby, again, I'm trying to make sense of if you're prosecuting this case, what's the motive here? What's the story you tell a jury?
Well, you tell the jury just based on what the evidence shows here, and they obviously had enough to charge her with homicide by child abuse. It does make you wonder why this charge instead of a murder.
Tyler, let me ask you about that, because South Carolina's Code of Law states that the charges she's facing, a person is guilty of homicide by child abuse if the person, 1, causes the death of a child under the age of 11 while committing child abuse or neglect, and the death occurs under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to human life. I'll talk a little bit later about how the law might be changed there, but that's what she's currently facing. Why not charge her with murder either instead or in addition to that? Because murder is the killing of any person with malice aforethought, either express or implied. I don't get it.
There must be something that we may not know that was shown in evidence. I did read about the umbilical cord, I believe, being found in a trash can or somewhere near the scene of the crime. And maybe there's some evidence that's showing that she possibly could have used this to try to cut the umbilical cord. Maybe she botched it, stabbed the child, and just did not care about the well-being and the medical treatment of the newborn baby. That's the only thing I could think that the prosecutors and the arresting officers or the investigating officers may have saw that led them to believe that there may not have been enough malice and forethought there for a murder charge, and that could give her an out. So they wanted to go with the charge that she could receive 20 to life on being homicide by child abuse, and they're pretty sure they can get a conviction.
Yeah, because it's going to be up to the medical examiner to determine the exact cause and manner of death. It hasn't been officially released yet, my understanding, but there seems to be really no question, because here's what the warrant for No's arrest says. On March 7th, 2025, Ann T. No physically harmed her newborn baby boy, who was born that day, within the home in the afternoon hours by repeatedly stabbing him with a long metal letter opener, which resulted in the death of the infant. The stabbing took place while the child was being delivered, and after delivery was completed, No provided a verbal statement post-Miranda confirming the consistency of the injuries to the newborn. No showed an extreme indifference to human life by conducting this act of violence, and then furthered the offense by not seeking medical attention for the newborn. The newborn's umbilical cord was cut by No, and the newborn was placed in a black trash bag and placed in a different room. Aside from how disgusting and appalling that is, Tyler, I mean, there's a few things to break down here. Number one, a letter opener? I mean, does that tell you anything about the level of this crime? It's not like a knife. Is it the first thing that she found? Again, I'm trying to understand that. But a letter opener?
Letter opener, I mean, she's in her apartment. I'm pretty sure she has other items in there, scissors, knives, things like that she probably use on a regular day-to-day basis. It does show her about what her state of mind could have been here. I'm pretty sure that will come up in the defense of this case, whether not guilty by reason of insanity or some other defense, or maybe not being competent to stand trial. But why grab a letter opener? I doubt a letter opener would be the closest thing near her. Clearly, she had something going on, and she's probably out of her mind, even commit a crime like this.
And by the way, her providing a statement, which we don't know exactly what the statement was, after she's read her Miranda rights, and she talks about the consistency of the injuries to that baby, what does that tell you?
Well, I mean, that's one thing that stood out to me about that is just the consistency of the injuries. Pretty much, we don't know what the question that she was asked, but we do know that after she received her Miranda rights, she had a right to counsel, she had a right to remain silent, that she decided to give comments following whatever question she was asked. And she definitely affirmed that the mechanism of the injuries that the newborn sustained were consistent with what she did with her own hands.
You mentioned a potential defense. The first thing I thought about whenever I hear about a horrific crime like this, I think, okay, is it possible the person was insane, right? You're trying to not even justify, you're trying to make sense of it. So in South Carolina, this is what it says. It is an affirmative defense to a prosecution for a crime that at the time of the commission of the act constituting the offense, the defendant, as a result of mental disease or defect, lacked the capacity to distinguish moral or legal right from moral or legal wrong, or to recognize the particular act charged as morally or legally wrong. Now, Tyler, take that, what do you make of that? Because match it up to the circumstances of this killing from what we know so far, but also she allegedly puts this baby boy in a trash bag, didn't take it outside, didn't throw it away, just puts it in another room. Where do we stand on whether or not she might have been insane?
Well, the aftermath of what she did, to me, supports a case of her being insane. She did not try to dispose of the body. She didn't try to hide the body somewhere else. It says that she put the newborn in a trash bag and left the baby in another room and did not even seek to try to get any medical care for the child, which could lead, a jury or a judge in this situation who would be hearing this, that she couldn't distinguish between right and wrong. Now, if there's evidence after the fact that she tried to conceal it, that she, hid the baby somewhere in a dumpster, drove off and tried to act like she never gave birth to a child, that could show that she had knowledge that she did something wrong. She was trying to conceal that from others. But right now, I think it's leading more likely than not that that fact could be used to support a case of her being insane.
And she wouldn't be the first mother to argue that, killing a child or killing a newborn and saying they were, insane. Is there grounds for that? I don't even want to say, sometimes we see cases where it's a few weeks or months afterwards, it's a postpartum situation, but the likelihood that this could be successful, have you seen something like this before?
Well, depending on whether she's successful is really going to be determined by how she was acting before. I'm pretty sure her being pregnant, she has a boyfriend, a male partner here who was the father of the child. He may have information on how she was acting the months and weeks leading up to her giving birth. Any friends could talk about how she was acting, because this is probably not a postpartum situation, because she just gave birth. And it sounds like she was in the process of giving birth when she started using the letter opener to, unfortunately, allegedly kill the newborn. So it's really going to be determined by, what other witnesses are out there. Of course, there'll be a medical expert to evaluate her. And we hope this is a situation where she was acting as if she was insane because she just wanted to murder this baby and was trying to play up her defense.
It's a fair point, fair consideration, fair concern. According to the police chief, I should say, No was taken to a hospital. She was released on Tuesday, immediately arrested. This is according to the New York Post. She appeared in court. She had a Vietnamese interpreter who was on hand to help her understand the charge that she's facing and her rights. And it's going to be up to a circuit judge to decide at a later date whether she will get bail. I don't imagine, Tyler, that's going to be an option for her.
No, it's a hard no. She's not going to get bail here in South Carolina. I can't see any circuit court judge giving her bail here, especially with these facts. A newborn baby. She's a clear flight risk, a danger to society, and a danger to herself. And I think one thing the chief of police referenced in his comments is wanting to give justice to this newborn. Yeah. So I highly doubt a circuit court judge would allow her bond. Jurors and community at large wants to protect children from being harmed by people. And so I think the system's going to do everything possible to keep her in jail and have her stand trial eventually.
By the way, the charge that she's facing, would you agree it would be easier for prosecutors to prove that maybe than murder, right? So again, causing the death of a child under the age of 11 while committing child abuse or neglect, and the death occurs under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to human life. That's very broad, right? So obviously it'd be a situation, let's say you leave a child in a hot car, but to stab a child, it's clearly textbook, right?
Look, I mean, this is probably a layup for the prosecution here. I mean, the fact that she put the child, after the child was stabbed, in a trash bag in another room, never called 911, never. There's no evidence showing that she tried to, stop blood from leaking from the newborn. So I think there's enough right now for an easy prosecution here. And then there's still an opportunity for her to do 20 to life. So depending after she's found guilty, if she does stay in trial, the circuit court judge could give her a penalty of life in prison.
By the way, something interesting about this bill, interesting about this law, is there was a bill that was just introduced in the South Carolina legislature, and it was introduced earlier this month, where it's aimed to amend the criminal code as it relates to homicide by child abuse. So the new bill would change the age from 11 to 18. So now it would apply to all minors, not just those 11 and under. And the bill was referred to the state's Judiciary Committee on March 4th. Do you think that's appropriate to do that, to make that change?
I think it is appropriate because at the end of the day, there's still children. So you could, a lot of times, let's think about parents who may have abused their children for life, and you could be a 17-year-old minor, but still, unfortunately, from the mental abuse and trauma that they've undergone for life, not feel as if they're free to do anything outside of their parents' control or an adult's control. So I think it's appropriate. Whether it actually becomes law here in South Carolina is another question. 17-year-olds can be considered adults under some cases in South Carolina when it comes down to some civil matters, entering the contracts, things of that nature. So I think that poses a problem.
I think it's well-meaning, it's well-intentioned, but I would wonder the practical application of it, because when you're dealing with children 11 and younger, there's an argument they can't take care of themselves. And so if they find themselves in a situation where they're harmed or killed, you have to say, was it the responsibility of the parent in some way? If you're 16 or 17 years old, that's a different situation, right? And then it becomes a question, how much can you hold the parents responsible for what happens to the child? If the 16 or 17-year-old gets a hold of something in a medicine cabinet and the parent didn't properly lock it, I don't know. I'm just coming up with a scenario here. Do you imagine that could be a difficulty in terms of the child's ability to take care of themselves?
Definitely. I mean, because you have some, for example, when I was 16 years old, I was probably 225 pounds, 6'2". I'm a pretty big kid. It poses some problems how this would actually be enforced, and when it would apply and when would it not apply. I could see situations where you have a 16-year-old, a child who may suffer from some limited capacity or some physical disability or lack of ability in certain things that you would think would apply more. And I think this is a way that would allow prosecuting agencies to get more convictions under a statute like this, where it's easier. So I could see the law enforcement reason for wanting this become law. But I think when you're looking at balancing defendants' rights and also considering law enforcement in the general public's willingness to try to protect minors, is going to be a balancing act. And I don't see it really happening again, becoming law here in South Carolina.
Well, I imagine all these questions are being debated right now about it. It's interesting, to say the least. But going back to this case, going back to Nell. So we talked about this before, but the Easley police chief vowed to get justice for this baby boy, who it seems, by the way, it's very clear, never stood a chance. We want to talk about the idea of being in a helpless situation, vulnerability. I can't tell you what's more vulnerable than a newborn like this, who's then allegedly attacked by their mother. Take a listen to the Easley police chief.
But I can assure you, we will speak for this baby. The baby that cannot speak for himself. We will speak for this baby. We will make sure that this baby will receive justice. It didn't have a chance at life, not long. And so it's our job to make sure that this baby does receive that. As you can imagine, we are human as well. It's hard on a lot of our people, but I can promise you this: our officers will make sure to complete this mission. We will make sure, regardless of how horrific this is, we will make sure our job is done, that every fact that can be found will be found. We're a very close community here in Easley. That's why we wanted to make sure everyone knew what we could tell them. Unfortunately, we can't answer any more questions other than that, because it is very much an ongoing investigation at this time.
Tyler, so what does that mean in terms of when we, the public, will get more information as to the circumstances surrounding the death of this child?
Yeah, because they're still investigating the case. They wanted to give a statement, as he referenced, it being a tight-knit community in Easley, letting the public know what happened. But there's still going to be more facts that come out. We already talked about there are probably interrogations or, I guess, at least seeking feedback from witnesses like the boyfriend, like her friends and family, what her state of mind could have been. There could have been questions that were asked about how many times the child was stabbed, where the child was stabbed, photographs of the trash bag in the room, and things like that. So I understand there being no more comments from the police chief after giving an initial statement, but there's still going to be investigation. This was a gruesome crime. There's still more that's going to come out from the medical evidence, the coroner's office, and possibly autopsy of this minor newborn child. So there's a lot that can still come out. And the investigation, as he said, it is still pending.
Now, we looked a little bit into this. We weren't able to find any other criminal history for Miss Snow in South Carolina. She also lived in North Carolina for several years, was charged with obtaining property under false pretense and misdemeanor larceny in 2016, so that's interesting. But the details about the alleged crimes really weren't provided, but court records indicated both charges were later dropped by prosecutors. But now you go to South Carolina, you talk about the law that she's facing, you talk about the charge. Under this charge, it's our understanding, Tyler, she faces a sentence of 20 years to life in prison if she's convicted. And her next court appearance is in May, but that could change. am I crazy? I don't get a scenario where she doesn't get life, where, 20 years comes up. What could be happen at a parole hearing where she might say something that, or convince the court or convince the parole board that she should get a second chance?
The only thing I think that could give her a second chance is if this case goes to trial and some more evidence comes out about her maybe having some other problems going on in her life, that she was really remorseful for her actions, that she had some sort of manic depression or something that could kind of give some mitigation here. But we'll find out more. I mean, we don't know how many times this child was stabbed. If she really, as the police chief said, showed no care for the newborn, it seems like she just had a depraved heart here. And I don't see any situation where a parole board or judge, any decision makers would feel justified in giving her anything less than life, given that she stole or allegedly stole the life of a newborn baby who never had a chance to even walk his first step.
Tough case, tough case. Tyler Bailey, thank you so much. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the potential defense is, what this potential explanation is, what the evidence is, but just a really, really tough one to cover. Great seeing you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.